Celestica Seastone DX010 is very affordable if you search on eBay, and at the same time it also supports the very popular SONiC network operating system. The 2 points make it a popular choice among home labs. The challenges are there are very few documentations on the web, and due to the nature of SONiC operating system, there might be a lot of problems when you initially do the setup. I'm going to have this video to briefly talk about how I initially set up my switch. Hope it can be helpful to some of you. To run this switch, you need a network operating system. In this video, I'm going to only talk about SONiC. This switch also supports some other operating systems, but SONiC is the one I use. The switch comes with an operating system which will help you install SONiC. It's called Onie. On the screen, I show you 2 web pages, one for Onie, one for SONiC. So SONiC is a popular open source network operating system for routers and switches. Onie is just a simple bootloader plus a tiny operating system helping you to install network operating system. If you check this simple graph, you can see it will support the serial console part, management network part, and your storage. That's exactly what we need in the initial installation of another network operating system. I won't discuss all the details. Let's directly jump to the installation. During the installation, especially in the beginning, you need to see the screen when the system is rebooting. Apparently, SSH won't work, so you need to connect to the serial console port, which is available on the switch. The one on the screen is the cheap cable I use, USB 2.0 to RJ45 cable. You can choose whatever you want. This happens to be the one I use. You insert the end with RJ45 to the front panel of the switch, and then the other end, the USB, just plug in your computer. I use Mac OS. It has built-in utility. It's called Screen. I believe in Linux you have the same thing. Use the command on the screen. I specify the device which is automatically generated once you insert the USB cable. It's called TTY something USB something, and then the parameter 115.200 is just the baud rate. I reboot my switch, and here is what you can see on the console screen. If you already have SONiC installed, like my case, you will see a screen like this, but because we want to start from scratch, so let me choose the second option, which is Onie. It is a must to uninstall existing OS first, so I will choose the third item. Then the Onie operating system will boot into a uninstall network operating system mode. First, it will acquire IP address for the management network Ethernet 0 part. Then it will automatically start erasing the SDA3 drive for existing SONiC, and this process is super slow. Just for a about 16 gigabyte device, it may take 10 minutes, so I will skip the lengthy part. Let's see what's the end. Yeah, it's done. Then it will reboot the operating system automatically. The same menu. Let's choose the first one to install SONiC. It will acquire Ethernet 0 IP address. This step is important because we need the IP address to connect with SSH. On the screen, I show you 2 terminals. The left one is the remote session of the console for the switch. As you can see, it is still in the installing new OS mode. I want to start the installation from a separate SSH session. The device already got the IP address for the network management part, so let me try to SSH to it. I got this type of error. If you Google the similar errors, you may realize the root cause is Onie, which comes with the switch, is too old. When it comes to keys encryptions, some are disabled by default in the new SSH client, for example, the ones from macOS. That's why you get this error. To resolve the SSH client issues in macOS is very easy. I'm showing you a web page I googled. There are simple steps. Just follow it. You can easily fix the error. For other SSH clients or other operating systems, I never tried. You may do your own research. Okay, I already made the necessary settings. Let me try again. Okay, as you can see, the root password default is nothing, so I directly connected using root already. In fact, now we are ready to install SONiC already, but you may ask, where are your installation files? Exactly, that's the next problem we need to resolve. There can be multiple ways to transfer files to the Onie installation environment. For example, you can use wget. Unfortunately, it doesn't support HTTPS, so you cannot directly use it to grab the installation file from SONiC website because it's using HTTPS. You may want to work around it by using a simple HTTP-based local web server and host the installation file, right? That's one way to do that. Another way is there's a USB port on the switch. I never use it, but maybe you can use it to transfer the file. But I prefer SCP, simply copy the installation files to the Onie folder because I already established the SSH session. SCP is using the same protocol, so I'm pretty confident it's doable already. Now it's time to talk about another headache, which is which SONiC image you want to download. So on the screen, I show you the official SONiC image pipelines. There are a lot to choose from. You need to choose the Broadcom platform, but you see multiple branches. For each branch, if you click here, history further, you can see dozens, hundreds of different images. So you may ask, which version is the stabilized version, right? Unfortunately, because of the nature of the SONiC OS, it's open source, it's based on fast iteration development. Nobody will tell you which one to choose. It's all up to you. So that's the beauty of fast iteration, and that's also a headache. The way I choose it is I first select the Broadcom. I choose the non-master one because master may be bleeding edge versions and maybe it's very buggy. I would choose the a little bit lower version branches. Let's say I choose this one. I click the build history. You can see tons of information. The most scary part is the result, because for many of them, more than half of them, it says failed. So what it means? Are you able to even install it, right? I don't know the answer, but the way I choose it is I simply go with a succeeded version, and then I choose the artifacts, click on the link again, and then scroll to the very end. In the end, you can find the target SONiC Broadcom .bin. That's the image for that particular succeeded version. I would simply download it and save to my macOS. I'm not part of the SONiC development team, right? I don't really want to chase the latest version. I just want to get a version which works for me and then stick with that. Once it's downloaded, we can try SCP to transfer the file to the Onie environment. Okay, on the screen, I launched another terminal, and here I want to run the scp command to transfer the file which I just downloaded to the Onie to this temp folder. Right? Okay, it's running. Give it some time. Okay, it's done. Let me close this terminal. Then go back to the SSH. It is still connected. Let me run the Onie install command. In the left side, I still show you the console. It is still running. Let's ignore it. Let's run this command. I'm going to run the Onie NOS install and with the image I just transferred. Okay, now the left side and the right side, they are showing almost the same information. Only service discovery is not running because it is still doing something meaningful, which is installing the NOS, right? Give it some time. This process is also a little bit time consuming. It may take multiple minutes, but the good part is there's no any interaction. So you just type the command, that's it. It doesn't ask you any question. Everything's automatic all the way to the initial configuration generation and then rebooting. Theoretically, after the installation, you should have a working switch already. Let's see. This step is the most time-consuming one. Okay, finally it's done. Yep, successful. See, the SSH is killed automatically, and in the left side, you can see the switch is rebooting automatically. Then you see the menu change, right? Now it has the SONiC OS. Let it boot. See, it will install the DX010 platform. So which means it's automatically generating some configurations. Okay, theoretically, the default installation is done. I'm ready to log on to the system already. After SONiC is installed, we need to SSH into the system again. This time we need to use different username password because now we are trying to log on to SONiC instead of Onie. I'm using admin as the user. And the default password is a weird one. I will show you the password on the screen. Okay, I'm in. Maybe the first thing you want to do is to change the password. And give it a super secured new password. Now let's start some real settings. After SONiC is installed, the very first problem you may want to resolve is the fan noises. This is what I recorded when the camera was 2 feet away from the front panel. You may want to lower your volume, be warned. I decided not to show you exactly what I changed about fan control. Please understand, there's no official document for that. What I did was just something I copied from internet forum. You can do the research and find out how you want to change it. We are talking about fan control, an official way. Whatever you change may do harm to your hardware, right? So take your own risk. But I'm going to show you in which folder I found the fan control configuration files. It's in the user shared folder for SONiC for this particular hardware. You can see something start with fan control. Those are the files I changed. Do your own research, take your own risk. I will show you the before and after comparison. This is before the change. This is after the change. The SONiC OS installer will generate a configuration which makes the device work in level 3 mode. If that works for you, perfect. But if you want to make it work in level 2 mode, there are more work for you to do. Let me first show you what's the initial configuration after the installation. First command, show interfaces status. You can see there are 32 interfaces configured initially, no breakout. Here in the type side, it correctly identified each single cable type. But if you check the OPER, which means operational status, I believe, they are all showing down. Why? Check the VLAN column, they are all routed. They are working in level 3 mode. For the FEC column, they are all not applicable or not available. But for some cables, you may want FEC columns to be set. So there are a lot of problems which cause your initial configuration doesn't work for you. Okay, show you the second command. I'm showing running configuration interfaces. As you can see, for all the interfaces, there are IP addresses configured. because they are working in level 3 mode. The third command, I'm showing the running configuration BGP related settings. A lot of things are going on. Each interface has neighbor configured. Maybe you don't really need it at this moment. Let's see how we can set the device to work in level 2 mode. It's pretty simple. What you want is just regenerate the JSON configuration file in level 2 mode. The switch configuration file is stored in this folder. The name is config_db JSON. Let's try to edit it now. You can see all the metadata, and then you see each interface was the default configuration. And if you scroll to the end, you can see all the IP addresses and the breakout settings. Those are the configurations saved in a file, and we are good with that. Let me quit it. What we want to do now is to generate a file to overwrite this configuration. The way I want to generate the file is I run this command SONiC config gen and use the preset values L2 mode, and then I use this particular model and redirect to this file. Keep in mind, now I'm running the command in my default home folder, so after it's run, it won't overwrite the existing file yet. Let's first check what's generated, then we overwrite the existing one. Okay, it's done. See what's generated. Metadata, no problem. And for part, you can see it's almost identical, but with a little bit less lines. And for breakout, the same. Here comes the new thing. It has a VLAN created, and the VLAN ID is 1000. And every interface is set to this VLAN, but the tagging mode is untagged. That's exactly what we want the switch to work on if we want to run it as a normal switch. I don't see any IP address or BGP mode. That means it is in the layer 2 mode. Okay, I'm good. Quit it. Then I want to delete the existing configuration file. Okay, then I want to move this newly generated one to the default configuration folder. Okay, let's move it. Nothing will happen with the switch because we just saved the file, but we haven't activated the new setting yet. How we can do that? We want to run config reload. Okay, it's running. Basically, it's stopping the existing services and then restart everything. You can hear the noises from my server room. The service is being restarted. Okay, it's done. Now, if I run the show interfaces status again, let's see what's the current status. It's still being initialized. Give it some time. Okay, immediately you see the VLAN column. They are all chunk. They are not routed anymore. Even though all the operational status, they are still showing down because I haven't done anything about each interface setting yet. That's what we are going to talk about next. And before we move on, there's one more thing I want to mention. Remember, for the generated VLAN, let me show you the VLAN setting now. Let me run show VLAN brief. They are all under VLAN 1000 and the port tagging is untagged. I did try to use other VLAN IDs. I tried VLAN 1, but it didn't work. It seems this particular switch or SONiC OS, they don't like VLAN 1. If you know the exact reason, let me know, but I would avoid VLAN 1. The default generated one, the 1000, works for me, so I won't bother change it. I planned to talk about for different type of cables how I configure them to make them work in this switch. But then I realized I already talked about most of the details in another video in my channel. So in this video, I will not repeat the details. I will only talk about one particular example from end to end, which is the last two. As you can see now, for the very last two interfaces, I already plug in the QSFP plus cable. To be more specific, I plug in two breakout cables. My goal is to do a link aggregation so that I achieve a 80 gigabits uplink to my home network. In the video, you can see I already plug in the two cables, and in the other end of the cables, I connected to Unified switches, and in Unified switches, I enabled link aggregation already. But here, you still see the green LED lights, they are not on. That means the configurations are not correct for those two interfaces. So let me show you how I configure it. First step, break out. In fact, SONiC OS has dedicated CLI for breaking out. Unfortunately, for the SONiC OS version I use, it doesn't work for this switch. But it's not big deal because we can easily edit the configuration JSON file to achieve the same effect. Let me do it now. Find the last two interfaces. Let me pick the 120 Ethernet as example. The default setting is one interface has 4 lanes and each lane is 25 gigabits. So in total we have 100 gigabits, right? But I plug in the QSFP plus cable. That means the total speed is 40 gigabits, but for each lane it's only 10 gigabits. We want to change this. Instead of 4 lanes, we want each interface has only 1 lane. You can use whatever editor you like, but I prefer VI. There are totally 7 lines for this interface, so I will hit 7, then Shift Y. So I copied 7 lines, then I click Shift P, paste it once, another time, paste twice, another time, paste 3 times. So I have 3 duplicated configuration. Apparently I need to change them accordingly, right? Start with the first one. For alias, we need to change it a little bit so that it won't conflict with other names. So let's say I name the first one 1, and I need to leave the index because that's the internal ID to identify this part. For lanes, of course, I only need 1 lane. For speed, let me remove a 0, so that is 10 gigabits, right? Okay, we are done with the first interface. For the second one, change the name to 121, and for alias, another name. For index, leave it. For lanes, use 122 for this case, and then change the speed to 10, right? So similarly, I will change the other two, and then do similar thing for the very last interface. By the way, when you edit the very last interface, keep in mind we are editing JSON file, so I move the cursor to the very last bracket. It doesn't have a comma following it, so when you copy it, you need to make sure you have the correct syntax JSON file. Okay, I won't waste your time, so I assume you are done with this. I will directly show you the results. I'm done with editing. Originally, we only had 2 interfaces. Now I manually break them out to 8 interfaces, and each of them has its own alias, its correct index, its dedicated lane, and the correct speed. Looks good to me. Let me save it. Let's reload the configuration. Now let's show the interface status. See the very last 8 interfaces, they are all showing up. On the switch, all the 8 LED lights for the 2 interfaces, they are on. If you look at this column carefully, you can see for 2 of the 8 interfaces, they are saying trunk. The others, they are saying routed. The reason is the 2 trunk ones, they inherit whatever settings from the existing 120 and 124 Ethernet interfaces. The other 6, they were newly created by me, right? We haven't added them to a VLAN yet. That's why they are showing routed. Because our final goal is to add all the 8 interfaces to a link aggregated interface. That interface, that new interface, need to be trunk, but not this individual base interface. So that's why the first thing we need to do is to remove the 2 interfaces from VLAN 1000. Let me do it now. I say config VLAN member delete from 1000. Delete this Ethernet port. Done. And move on to the next one. Now let's display the interface status again. All 8 of them, they are showing routed. Now we are ready to create the link aggregated part. First, create a port channel. You can think port channel in SONiC is just another name for, let's say, link aggregation group in Unified switch. There's a very restricted naming convention. So for a port channel, it has to start with port channel and then you give it a sequence number. This is the name I will give it. Create it. Done. Nothing really happened because we haven't added any physical interface to it yet. Now let's add the very first one. I'm going to add a new member to this port channel 0. Then the very first interface out of the 8 we just configured. Similarly, I will add the other 7. The SSH session hangs. Then after a while, it quit by itself. It says broken pipe. Apparently, after we enable the port channel 0, added 2 physical interfaces, something happened. So we were kicked out of the SSH. Let's see whether we can still ping the management port. Yeah. We can still ping it, but command go most of the time is timeout. Something's wrong with it. You may already realize the root cause. Remember, before we add the port channel 0, we only have one uplink, which is the network management port, right? The 1 gigabit one, which we used to use SSH. Everything worked fine. But right after we added this new port channel, as I mentioned, I already linked it to my home network. So basically, we are already having a loop. Theoretically, the unified switch, the STP function can detect that and then disable a slow part. Apparently it didn't happen because I checked my unified network controller. Both interfaces are showing enabled, but here we cannot connect to the original management port already. I'm not sure where the issue is, whether it's in the DX010 switch where STP is not properly implemented or never implemented, or something's wrong in the unified side. But anyway, for this situation, it should have been detected, but it was not. To continue my configuration, I have to go to the server room, use the serial cable to directly connect to the device. Now I'm using another Mac in server room. Using the serial cable, I'm showing you the current interface status. As you can see, only 2 interfaces had been added to the port channel 0. I need to continue with the other 6. Let me paste the command and add them all together. Everything goes well. Now let's check what's the current situation. Okay, very good. We added all the 8 and the very last row is about port channel. Now I need to add the new port channel 0 to VLAN 1000. The very last -u parameter means untagged. Before we execute this command, keep in mind the port channel 0 is showing routed. Now let's see what's the status. Okay, it's showing trunk. Perfect. Now the port channel 0 is up and running and it's 80 gigabits uplink. It's time to end this video. For every single step, there may be problems here and there, but at the same time, there are also a lot of fun. Good luck with your configuration and have fun. Thanks for watching.